What if addiction isn't really about craving, but about escape? Carl Jung once wrote, "All neurosis is a substitute for legitimate suffering." For the addict, that suffering doesn't fade. It lingers, it tightens, until relief becomes ritual. Drinking, scrolling, using, anything to forget. But what if addiction isn't a failure? What if it's a signal from the unconscious, a desperate attempt to reclaim something essential? In this video, we explore addiction through the lens of Carl Jung. Not to diagnose, but to understand, because addiction isn't just about substances, it's about the way we run from emptiness, from grief, from the parts of ourselves we were never taught to hold. If you've ever felt trapped in a cycle you didn't choose, this is for you. Most addictions don't start with the drug, they start with silence, a silence that fell over the room when you cried and no one came. A quiet belief that your feelings were too much, that your needs made you weak. So the addict learns early. To survive, you numb something inside. The bottle, the pill, the ritual, they're not just habits, they're shields, ways to soften the sharp edges of shame, loss, emptiness. Addiction is not indulgence, it's anesthesia. And still the ache returns. Have you ever tried to feel nothing, only to discover that numbness is its own kind of pain? That's the paradox. Addiction promises relief, but deepens the wound. What we need isn't escape, it's acknowledgement. Carl Jung believed we all carry a hidden side. He called it the shadow, not evil, but repressed. Traits we've disowned: anger, vulnerability, desire, grief. Not because they're wrong, but because we were told they were unacceptable. For the addict, the shadow doesn't stay quiet. The more they suppress it, the louder it becomes. Addiction becomes the shadow's megaphone. What they're chasing isn't the substance, it's the suppressed self. The parts buried under years of shame or survival. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In addiction, fate feels like failure, but often it's just the shadow asking to be seen. Jung once said, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism." But he also believed this. Addicts aren't just escaping, they're seeking, not just oblivion, transcendence. Addiction mimics the spiritual quest. That moment of using, it can feel like returning to something whole. Even if just for a breath, the ritual, the stillness, the pause from pain, it feels sacred, but it's a counterfeit version of connection. Many addicts are spiritual exiles, longing for peace, trapped in what only resembles it. Jung knew recovery begins not with abstinence, but with anchoring to something real, something that fills the same void, without destroying the self. Addiction is a sacred hunger, expressed destructively. Have you ever mistaken intensity for meaning, escape for transcendence? If any of this speaks to a quiet place in you, pause and reflect. Share your thoughts in the comments. What part of yourself have you been taught to silence? Addiction is a war between the self who wants to stop and the one who can't bear to. This isn't indecision, it's fragmentation. Jung called it the battle of the persona and the shadow. The persona says, "I'm fine," even while falling apart. The shadow holds the hurt, the hidden, the hungry, the part that uses. And the more the cycle repeats, the deeper the shame, the wider the divide. But here's the truth. The part that uses isn't the enemy. It's a wounded protector, trying in its own way to keep pain at bay. Healing doesn't begin with control. It begins with listening. What if the part of you you've been fighting is the part that needs you most? Jung believed only the wounded truly heal. Not because pain is noble, but because it opens a door. The addict often carries this archetype, the wounded healer. They're not broken, they're deep. Their pain is real, raw, invisible. But it can be transformed through awareness, through reflection, through sharing. Many who recover become mirrors, not because they're flawless, but because they've faced what others avoid. This is Jung's alchemy, turning pain into wisdom, shadow into teaching. Have you ever wondered, could your wound become your gift? Recovery isn't a straight line, it's a spiral, a sacred process. It begins with this truth: I am not just the addict. I am the one who used, the one who hid, and the one who wants to be free. This is shadow work, not willpower, but presence, not perfection, but honesty. Real recovery lets go of the false identities, the overachiever, the pleaser, the rescuer, and asks, what were these masks protecting? When you welcome the parts you've exiled, the psyche begins to heal. Not by force, but by inclusion. If this resonates, comment below. What part of you are you learning to welcome back? Let others know they're not alone. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the wound demanded armor. Jung called this individuation, becoming whole, not perfect, not pure, just real. All parts welcomed, all parts known. For the addict, sobriety isn't the end, it's the beginning. Because addiction doesn't just numb, it speaks of longing, of meaning, of presence. When that hunger is honored, not judged, it changes. You stop running from the dark. You sit with it, you listen, and in time, it softens, it humbles, it teaches. Wholeness isn't about fixing, it's about allowing. And from that place, the addict is not broken, they're becoming. Addiction isn't just about substances, it's about suffering and the stories we build to survive it. Through Jung's eyes, the addict is not a failure, they're a seeker. Their pain points towards something deeper, something sacred. We've explored the shadow, the split, the alchemy. This isn't about rejection, it's about integration. Ask yourself, what pain are you still carrying? What part of you have you exiled? Take these with you. Notice your coping rituals. Not to judge, but to ask what they protect. Welcome one uncomfortable emotion. Sit with it. Let it speak. Imagine wholeness, not as perfection, but as holding contradictions without turning away. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. If that speaks to you, comment one word: wholeness. Let's see how many of us are on this path. And if you want more of this kind of depth, honesty, and reflection, subscribe. This work is just beginning.